One of the differences between cities and rural areas is known as the urban heat island effect. So cities tend to be a lot hotter than rural areas, partly because of the amount of thermal mass within cities compared to rural areas. So the thermal mass of concrete building materials tend to absorb heat in the daytime and then slowly re-release it overnight. So on average, city temperatures, urban temperatures, can be higher than those in rural areas.
Now on a cool, calm night with a clear sky, especially during the summer, you find that the heat cannot escape from the city as much as it can from a rural area. So during the night time, often just before sunrise, the temperature in Manchester, for instance, could be up to 8 degrees C warmer than it is in the rural area. During the daytime, it will be about 1 or 2 degrees warmer than the rural area. And so this is what the urban heat island is. And there are a lot of buildings now that are well insulated, new buildings that is, not the old buildings. New buildings that are well insulated could overheat during the summer. And some of the old buildings with plenty of glazing as well could overheat. Now this means that people will be pretty uncomfortable on a hot day, and if there are going to be heat waves, as there are likely to be more in the future due to climate change, there will be more summer-related heat deaths as a result. And we recently looked at data over 16 years, and we found that it's actually increasing with time. Now this means that if we get to the end of the century, the temperature due to urban heat island alone could be 2 degrees C higher than it is now. Now you add this onto the climate change of about 2 to 6 degrees, and it's increasing it substantially more.
Total daily demand. As a society, we need to consider how we cope with those hotter temperatures. If we choose to do that by installing air conditioning, it's going to have significant impacts on our electricity supply system. So we need to start thinking now about how we make our buildings and our cities much more resilient to our future hotter summers.
We think that in the summer there will be a more complex pattern of power flows on our electricity network. Some of that will be due to increased air conditioning demand for electricity, particularly in areas with lots of non-domestic customers, commercial areas like central Manchester. And also in the summer, we're going to have more electricity generation from solar photovoltaics, solar farms and rooftop PV. So overall, we're looking at a much more complex pattern of electricity flowing across our distribution network. And one of the things that we're doing now to address that challenges and some other challenges to our network is investing in a new network management system here to help us manage those more complex patterns of electricity flow.
We can design buildings that don't need air conditioning. It's that much more difficult, but we can do it, and we have to take into account the urban heat island when we design new buildings.
So there are a number of different ways in which you can design buildings to reduce their cooling load in summers. And these include encouraging systems for passive ventilation, for example. It might include shading, or it might include orientating the building to reduce the solar gain it gets during those summer months.
I think the future holds good prospects, because if we design our buildings and the areas, the urban areas together, that we don't look at a building in isolation, we look at the whole context of where it is, of how many trees, of how much green there is, the orientation of shading. One building can affect another. The size of the canyon is important, how much air you can get through, because if you've got a fairly windy day, it blows the urban heat island away. So if you can maximise the ventilation of the city, and if you can make sure that the buildings are properly designed, it's not too much of a problem.
There's a lot of uncertainty about exactly how electricity demand will change in the future. Air conditioning is just one part of that. Other factors are things like energy efficiency, demographics, economic change, new generation, and the future uses of our electricity network to recharge electric vehicles and to run heat pumps. So air conditioning is just part of that big picture, but there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly in relation to air conditioning. When is it going to be installed? What? Where? Which particular types? How much electricity will they use? What temperatures will be acceptable in the buildings that we're going to have the air conditioning installed? And how will climate change affect that? And who is actually going to make all of those decisions directly and indirectly? There's quite a lot of range in the potential futures, and the work by the University of Manchester has started to look at that, but there's plenty of work still to do, and that's an area that we're working on now.
What we can expect in the future from climate change is very much dictated by the rate and scale at which we reduce our greenhouse gases. So globally, international agreements focus on avoiding climate change or global warming of more than 2 degrees. And to avoid that level of warming, we need to rapidly reduce the greenhouse gases associated with our energy system and also our industries as soon as possible. And that will hopefully enable us to avoid the more severe, more dangerous consequences of climate change. If we continue on our current trajectory and continue emitting greenhouse gases at the rate we do at the moment, we're more likely to face global warming of 3, 4 and beyond by the end of the century. And those impacts are significant for us.